From KAMR Local 4 News, your local election headquarters, this is Politics Today.
Amarillo City Council members take a vote on the next budget and proposed tax rate. Details on what they decided and how they feel about the process. And it's a big boost for a water system pipeline project, the amount given and what will be done with these funds. After much work, public hearings, and going back to the drawing board, the City of Amarillo has their upcoming budget and new tax rate. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mari Farrell. Council hosted a special meeting this week to do a public forum on the budget and tax rate, then took a vote. They both passed 5-0. The budget includes money for the women's clinic, merit raises, and raises for police and fire. They have one last procedural vote to finalize this week. The council has 2 new members, so this budget was a learning curve for all, but especially those who were just elected in. The budget process included frustrations, discussions, and a lot of planning. We spoke with Mayor Cole Stanley shortly after their meeting this week.
The legal work's been done, all the discussions have been done, everything's been put out. We've had our public hearings. We have one more formal walkthrough item, and it's procedural, and then we'll have the budget ready to operate on our fiscal year 25-26. It's a good budget. It's balanced. It didn't get to the level of raises, especially for those public safety first responders that we wanted to increase. So we need to continue to dig in on that and see what we can become more efficient on over this next year so that we can continue to be competitive with those salaries. We also have staff as our biggest priority. So you think about when you say public safety, badged personnel is important, but what about our civilians in those departments? What about all the other supporting departments? What about our local heroes that are fixing that water line that we keep talking about that breaks at 2 a.m. in the morning when it's 20 degrees? So driving monies into personnel salaries is where we need to go. And then we're not growing government when we're growing the size of our first responders, right? What we're doing is we're growing as a community. And so as our community continues to grow from 200,000 to 210, 220, 250, we need to continue to attract, retain, and add personnel.
Of course, and can you talk about how tax rate obviously increased? It's rarely does it decrease. Can you talk about how that's going to impact Amarillo residents? The budget increasing is going to impact Amarillo residents on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so you have 2 different metrics. You have valuation, that we saw it go way up, and so your tax rates came down over the previous 2 years. Even though taxes increased, those revenues increased. Now what you're seeing is those valuations are starting to level off, and so that tax rate is increasing back up in order to continue to bring in those revenues that we need and that you guys have voted in. And so with that, I would tell you that the money's there. It's now stewardship. We need to steward those monies well. We need to continue to make sure we're getting value for those dollars, and that by the end of this year, we can be accountable to our taxpayer and to our voter.
Of course, and you had 2 new members on your council for this budget season. Tell us how you think they did and how, as a whole, you think council handled this budget season.
Well, I think that budget is a test of how much can you sit down and digest in one sitting. And can you do it 4 or 5 days in a row and keep up with the complexities of how government accounting works, how different funds have balances, inter-service transfers and billing, enterprise versus general fund, O&M, operations and maintenance versus interest and sinking and debt, so everything there together is a whole lot. What you saw was you saw one council member that paid attention and listened and stayed pretty quiet the whole time, but you could tell at the end his words were weighted and very valuable. And the directions that he wanted to drive, I feel like he got his voice. And then you saw another council member like Councilman Prescott, who showed up with a pretty good acumen for business and business at a high level. And I felt like he didn't have any issues in keeping up with the complexities of the budget. I know for me personally going through it, it took me years to get to where those 2 guys were. And so thankful to have good elected officials and representatives that can ascertain a complicated budget item like that, put it into practice, and move us forward quickly.
And really my last question, staff. So staff put together this budget, they made the changes that were requested in the best of their capabilities. Can you kind of talk about how the staff handled this budget season?
Well, I felt like staff was definitely going a direction that I know I was not at the beginning. We had what I felt like was not a very professional presentation on the beginning, but you saw a pivot from there. You saw staff and council come back together, sit back down and say, okay, if we're going to move forward together, here's what we're going to need to do. We agreed kind of on the middle of the road, literally as the road or the street, and we moved the budget forward, and that's the point. It's not necessarily how you get there or the professionalism in what it did or didn't look like. It's about bringing the public into your closed meetings, so to speak, and discussing the hard issues and bringing everything to a budget item to where when we put it out there, staff has their needs met, so they have all the tools and the monies and everything that they need to go out and perform those high quality core services.
So this year, y'all had a budget process where y'all had to raise the budget somewhat up. And I know in the future, we have some really big ticket items coming down the line. What kind of lessons can you learn from the budgets that you've been involved with moving forward to kind of
Yeah, I'd say the biggest lesson is going to be planning. And so what we are dealing with in those really big ticket items are items that needed to be planned 10, 15 years ago. And so a lack of planning that far in advance can put those big ticket budget items on a council where now you really have to absorb it as almost a loss or as a cost overrun. Or you have to push it down the road a little bit and just say we're not willing to deal with it. This council, as well as previous council, willing to take it on, not going to kick a can, and going to put in a good business practice and a good plan that will provide for the growth, the expansion, and the longevity of the great city of Amarillo.
The council has a regular meeting on Tuesday. According to the agenda, the council will consider a number of ordinances to approve the operating budget with several departments and services. We'll hear from council member David Prescott about his experience with the budget process. Plus, after news of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk's death, some in the Amarillo community hosted a vigil. We'll take you there and hear from one of the organizers. Any budget process, big or small, isn't as easy as one thinks. It's especially hard when you're new to a city council, which has a big budget with a lot of moving parts. Following the Amarillo City Council special meeting this week, we heard from Place 3 council member David Prescott.
In terms of how it went, being I guess a junior member of the council and going through it, it was very interesting. It's a very detailed, very complex budget. Lots of line items. I think that this council did a fantastic job really diving in and looking at areas where we could maximize the limited amount of revenue that the city has. I mean, the most eye-opening piece that I saw is there are so many needs and so many wants that the city has, but there's just a limited amount of dollars that we can utilize to move forward, especially as we get more and more restrictions from Austin. The amount of money that we can use is slowly being whittled down. Austin wants more control, state control as opposed to city control. And I think that the council did the best we could with the dollars that we had.
Of course, and like you mentioned, this being your first full budget workshop season, how did you think that it went? How did you work with the other council members and things like that?
You know, I think that the entire council, they were aligned, and again, everyone is here with a servant heart. There are no agendas. I mean, there are no agendas when you have limited resources. As everyone knows, in each one of our homes, in all aspects of all of our individual lives, costs have gone up. They're going up in areas that we never expected, and it's putting a lot of strain on our personal budgets, our family budgets. It's no different for the city. Every vehicle costs more, gas costs more, food costs. I mean, every aspect in cost has gone up. And so as 5 individuals trying to work with city staff who brought a really comprehensive budget to us, who brought a at the best that we could with the goals that we had set forth early on. I think it was a good process. Of course, we had several special meetings, and everyone was aware of those, and really to get it to where we were able to agree on a number was strong.
Of course, and really my last question, could you maybe call out a couple of points that y'all were really focused on getting on this budget and why it was so important to y'all to focus on maybe a couple of those things? Like the fire, y'all were big proponents of that.
Of course, yeah, the PACE study. I mean, and you've heard me say this many times, this city's nothing but a bunch of buildings and a bunch of equipment if we don't have individuals operating, and it's the human component that makes any endeavor successful. I mean, we cannot run this city without the staff and the folks, and that's everyone. That's every individual has a role to play to make this very, very complex machine work, and everyone needs relief. And again, every family's feeling that increase. I mean, is anybody jumping up and down in the street right now because things have gone down so much that we have excess capacity in our personal budgets? No, that's not happening at all. And so everyone needs and has to get at least a cost of living adjustment in their salary, because that just allows us to remain stable and steady. It doesn't put us ahead, it just keeps us from falling further behind. So that was critical. Of course, taking care of the police and the firemen as they were misrepresented in salary load for so many years, and to get them at least into almost a level playing field is very beneficial, and they're not going to be poached by our neighbors to the south or to the east in Oklahoma City, and that's going to give us continuity and release strain, on those departments.
The proposed budget includes money for 1 new police officer and 1 new firefighter, as well as raises for police and fire, plus money for street and other projects. Whether you agree or disagree with political activist Charlie Kirk, there is no denying the impact he had on our political system. How the community met to honor his legacy. That's next. He's noted as one of the biggest influences in the GOP. Charlie Kirk, like him or his policies or not, inspired a number of young people. On September 10th, Kirk was shot and later died. The suspect in this case made his first court appearance this week and learned the charges he faces locally. Shortly after Kirk's death, the Amarillo area Young Republicans hosted a vigil. We spoke with the president of this group.
We're bringing the community together. The reason being is we're all angry, rightfully so, but I've told multiple people this, a torch was dropped, but that doesn't mean we're going to pick it up and start burning stuff down. We're going to pick it up and run with it and keep it going. That's what we're here for. Amarillo needs this, the country needs this, so I'm just trying to be a good neighbor here.
And then there's a huge crowd already, and then I know you were talking to people around. What's been the feedback from people, and how does it feel having this crowd?
So yeah, the feedback's been very, very positive. A lot of people here, it's young and old. It's more of a walks of all life kind of event. It's something I think is very beautiful. I wasn't expecting it. Here's what I was expecting. Whenever I was putting the post out, maybe 40, maybe 30 people. But looking around here, it's way more than that, which makes me believe there's a lot more grieving, there's a lot more passion, not just for conservative politics, but for America as a whole. So I'm excited to get to talk to more people. I might invite some people up to speak their mind. So.
And then, did you ever meet Charlie Kirk ever?
I did not meet Charlie Kirk. I know whenever he came to Canyon, a good friend of mine, he was associated with Turning Point USA. He had actually had a hand in helping him get him down to WT. So I didn't know him personally, but I wish I really could have. He's a really huge inspiration to me. Got me to wanted to be more involved in politics instead of just sitting behind my keyboard. He made me want to join an organization, want to go out and speak to people, want to go out and campaign for issues that I think are wrong and for ideals that I hold dear to my heart.
And then what impact did Charlie Kirk have on you specifically? I know you mentioned he had an impact for young voters, but what had an impact on you specifically?
For me, the biggest thing for me was growing up, I thought I was really quiet. debate wasn't really my best strong suit. I was always an argumentative kind of person. Listen to Charlie Kirk back in 2020 during the 2020 election taught me that okay, you can have a respectful argument with some people, with almost anybody, really, and the amount of empowerment that you feel not only to debate with somebody because it's not about power, but to be able to defend what you believe in. That's something that I hold dearly.
And then I know when this whole thing happened, there was like there's backing, and then there's like political violence from both sides. I know Charlie Kirk had debates, and he debated, but respectfully. People say that he did it respectfully.
Right.
Go start attacking people. Is this somewhere where people need to come together, even with differences, and respect each other?
Absolutely, it is. As you said earlier, there's been a lot of violence on both sides, and that's something that this is addressing. Again, as I said earlier, people are angry, and rightfully so. I mean, freedom of speech has been attacked, but that doesn't give us any justification for harming anybody. People on the left and the right can both agree that there's no room for political violence. You look back at JFK, RFK, you look at Ronald Reagan, you look at the Prime Minister of Japan, whenever he was assassinated, and Charlie Kirk especially. Those are people who are just speaking their minds, speaking the truth.
How can we fix that?
Charlie Kirk, his mission, what I believe is, and he stated this very clearly, open discussion, open debate. Whenever friends stop talking, that's when they crumble. Countries start crumbling whenever people stop talking. Whenever you take conversation out and discussion out, that leaves room for violence. And that was the reason why. He went on in the college campuses so we didn't have to. And that's a quote from him. So open discussion, open debate, those are the ways that we can prevent any kind of political violence from going on. So.
And then we did hear kind of rumblings on social media about counter protesters or protesters.
Right.
How can we handle that right now, especially like when his death was just Wednesday?
Number one is pray. Number two is, we still have to remain respectful. Again, one of the main purposes of this event is to prove that, yes, we're angry, but we're not violent.
Some of the fallout from this incident includes the employees and public school teachers from across the country that are being investigated for their comments regarding Kirk's death. Also, Wednesday night, ABC announced they were suspending the Jimmy Kimmel show indefinitely after recent comments. Moments before that announcement, Nexstar said they'll stop airing the show on less than 30 of their ABC affiliates. And for transparency, KAMR Local 4's parent company is Nexstar. New funds are going into an area water pipeline project that plus the new committee that a state lawmaker from this area was appointed to. Texas Representative Caroline Fairley is appointed to a new State House Select Committee. Fairley is one of 7 people who will be on the Committee on Civil Discourse and Freedom of Speech in Higher Education. Officials say they will study and issue reports on bias, discourse, and freedom of speech on Texas college campuses. Fairley said this committee was formed to, in part, quote, foster an environment where every student and professor can engage in open, respectful dialogue, end quote. The Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority announced they received national funding to support the construction of the Eastern New Mexico Rural Water System pipeline. According to a release from the organization, they received $10 million of federal appropriation to continue construction. When the pipeline is completed, it will provide water for the city of Clovis, the town of Elida, the city of Portales, and the city of Texaco. We will wrap up politics today after this. Keep it here. The Federal Reserve voted almost unanimously to lower the rate. It was lowered by 0.25 percentage points. So this happened. While that's good news, and experts say 2 more cuts are expected this year. Money experts say the people who will see some, but not a lot of changes include home equity lines of credit where rates could decline, those with mortgages with some rates falling to a little over 6%, and also those with high interest savings accounts who could see the rates lower. And make sure to stay up on the latest on politics news with us this week. We have continuing coverage on our website. That's at myhighplains.com. Also, make sure to check us out on Alexa, Instagram, and also like us on Facebook. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday afternoon. We'll see you back here next week.